The first Pinterest-inspired project that I found on my Pinterest boards that I wanted to recreate is this set of 4 ball jars wrapped in burlap that spell out the word fall. Now, I can't link to any vlog. It looked like this was at some time sold in someone's Etsy store, and I couldn't even find the store that it was from. So this is strictly coming right off of Pinterest. I don't know the original source. For my set of jars, I decided to use 2 antique blue glass jars, as well as 2 jars from the Dollar Tree. So the ones from the Dollar Tree I will be painting, and the 2 blue glass ones I will not be painting. I also have this burlap. Now I get my burlap from a local coffee roaster. I get giant burlap bags that the coffee beans come in, and I just cut those into strips. Then I'm also using some paint from my stash and other painting supplies, as well as some florals that you'll see later. And I started painting my jars. I started with a lighter color orange, and I just thought that was too light, so I switched to this darker color. It is a muted orange, and I think I've said in other videos that I am going for like a muted orange in my fall decor this year, so I thought this was really a perfect color. And I did give each of the 2 jars that I was painting 2 coats, and when I'm painting jars, I make sure that I paint the body of the jar in like a vertical motion, and then I go back and do the mouth of the jar in like horizontal strokes. So I just think it makes it look nicer. This video is part of a challenge called the Pinterest-inspired DIY Challenge, hosted by Domestic Diva DIY. If you haven't checked her out, I highly recommend that you go check out her channel. I will link it in my description box below. And once the paint was dry, I figured out what size strips I needed to go around each of the jars. And the orange jars are smaller than the blue jars, so I had to make sure I had 2 different size strips. If you look on the inspiration piece, you could see that the burlap strips kind of had a fringe on the edge. And in order to get that effect, you just pull threads out from the burlap, which is what I'm doing here. And then that gives it that fringy look. And once I figured out the order of the jars and what size strip needed to be which letter, I decided just to freehand the word fall onto the burlap strips. You definitely could use a stencil. I don't have a stencil, so I wasn't going to worry too much about it. I mean, it's on burlap anyway, so it was gonna look rough anyway. And you know, it's homespun and heartwarming. So, and I'm just making these for myself, so I'm not too worried about them looking professional. But I like my lettering anyway, so I think it turned out fine. And so I just made sure that I was putting the right letter on the right strip of burlap, because like I said, they were different sizes for the orange jars versus the blue jars.
Again, I keep forgetting to hit record.
Don't burn yourself again. It wasn't that worth doing again.
No.
I left that little bit in there so that you could hear the reality of what happens when I'm crafting. It was total chaos. But anyway, once the lettering was dry, I went ahead and wrapped the burlap strips around the jars, and I kind of glued them to themselves. So I didn't actually glue them to the jars. I just glued the burlap onto the burlap. And because I'm not gluing them directly onto the jar, and because I'm using hot glue, I will be able to remove those strips if I ever want to change this for any reason. I really like these jars, and I have plenty of the blue jars. I have a collection, so I don't foresee myself needing to remove them, but in case I want to, I did not glue the burlap strips directly. And you can see here that I just used a piece of sandpaper to rough up the paint on the orange jars before I put the burlap strips on. I just like that distressed look, and I have it throughout my house, so I figured I would carry it into this craft as well. And here's what the jar looked like once it was all wrapped in burlap. And then I took my twine and I wrapped it 2 or 3 times around the mouth of the jar and then tied a little bow. And here's what my set of Pinterest-inspired jars looks like. And I will be adding florals to these jars. I love these florals. They're from the Dollar Tree, but I haven't been able to find enough of them, so I'm going to need to go to some different Dollar Trees and try to hunt some more down. So I will do that at a later date, but this is what they look like right now. I really like how they turned out. My name is Nicole Northgarden, and this is my DIY channel. I also have a thrifting channel called All Things Thrift, where I often pick up many of the things that I craft with. And I also have Nicole Northgarden Home and Garden, where I put up clean and decorating content, haul videos, family vlogs, and other fun things. So I would love to have you join me on any of these other channels. I'll link them in my description box below. The second project I'm going to be working on is this wreath by domesticallycreative.com. It's a blog. I will link it in my description box below. I am going to be making something that's inspired by this, but not an exact duplicate. For this project, I started with an embroidery hoop from my stash. I paid 50 cents for this at a yard sale. I'm also going to be using this wood stain from my stash, as well as this banner that I got from the Goodwill outlet bins, but I think you can buy things like this at Dollar Tree or at Target. Then I'm using some florals that I recently bought at Dollar Tree. They're a pretty light orange color. Some boxwood from my stash and pumpkins from Dollar Tree from last year, but they do have these again this year. So I took a sponge brush and I gave my hoop a coat of stain. I definitely should have worn gloves to do the staining. I don't know what I was thinking. So you should definitely wear gloves if you work with wood stain. And also you definitely need to shake it up if it's been sitting in your stash for a while. So that's what I was doing there. And I gave the hoop 2 coats, but I gave it 1 coat and then I let it dry for about an hour and then I gave it a second coat. And so the way the stain works is you brush it on and then you wipe it off, and then you brush it on and you wipe it off. So my first coat I brushed on and then I wiped off with paper towels and then went in for the second coat, and the second coat took a lot better. Like you can barely see the first coat, but the second coat did a really nice job. And while my stain was drying, I grabbed this chalkboard paint from my stash. So I got this at a yard sale for $1. It's kind of expensive if you buy it in the store. The can is a disaster, but it kind of started out that way when I bought it. And I have not done a good job of making it any better, but that's fine. And I gave the little banner pieces 2 coats of the chalkboard paint. And I did also paint the backs of the little banner pieces because those will be visible from the back of the wreath. And while all that was drying, I got this lovely color of chalk paint from my stash. It's kind of like an aqua blue. And I painted one of my orange pumpkins with the aqua blue color. Once my little chalkboards were dry, I strung them together with the twine that came with the kit. And then using hot glue, I attached my flowers and pumpkins to my wreath. I will tell you, I put the things on and then took them off and then put them on again because I just didn't like the way that they looked. I liked it much better the second time around, but I did not take footage of the whole process because I was getting frustrated. And I have seen several signs this season with the phrase fall in love, and I think that's so cute. and different. So I decided to put that on my little banner. At first I was going to do fall, like the inspiration piece, but I'm like, I just made jars that say fall. How many things do I need that say fall? Then I thought maybe saying cozy, but then I was like, well, meh. I really like the idea of fall in love. So that's what I wound up doing. And I'm using an erasable chalk marker, so I can always change it if I want to. If I decide, I'd rather it say something else. And then I glued the Fall in Love banner around the wreath, so around the wooden hoop. And then I also glued little bows to where the Fall in Love banner was glued, just to disguise it. And here it is all finished. I love it. This one was a little harder. Like, those flowers kind of gave me a run for my money, but I do like the way it turned out in the end. And I love the little banner. So that's all that I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed these DIYs that I shared with you, and I will look forward to showing you another video next week. Until then, thanks for watching.